pretty hot.
Yeah, I've been working out.
In 1996, investigative journalist Gary Webb wrote a series of stories exposing the connection between the CIA and the crack cocaine that was being sold in South Central Los Angeles during the 1980s. These stories caused outrage everywhere, but the government denied the allegations, and competing news outlets claimed the series was poorly written and contained false reports.
Damn jackrabbit.
But years later, it was revealed that the information written in Gary Webb's series was true. Gary Webb was born on August 31st, 1955, in Corona, California. His father was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, so growing up, Gary's family moved around from state to state. At 19, Gary was living in Ohio. He was attending Northern Kentucky State University and writing for the school's newspaper, The Northerner. At The Northerner, Gary became the paper's entertainment writer and editor, writing music and art reviews. But his passion was investigative journalism. So just before graduating, Gary left school to take a job at one of the major newspapers in Kentucky. Working as an investigative journalist for the Kentucky Post and the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Gary was able to do what his colleagues would later say he was born to do: investigate corruption. For over 10 years, Gary Webb wrote and reported on local corruption in Kentucky and Cleveland, winning acclaim for his writing. In the mid-1980s, Gary moved back to California, where he started working at the Mercury News, a small regional newspaper in San Jose. At the Mercury News, Gary Webb continued as an investigative journalist and dedicated much of his time to reporting on America's war on drugs and wrongdoing that was happening within government institutions. In 1995, 9 years after joining the Mercury News, Gary was writing a story that involved a controversial California law that gave law enforcement the right to seize a person's property and money if police suspected that person was a drug dealer, even before the suspect was charged with the crime. After this story came out, Gary Webb was contacted by a woman who told him that her boyfriend was in the same situation. His property had been taken because he was accused of being a drug dealer, and he was currently sitting in jail. Always in search of the truth, Gary told the woman he would investigate her boyfriend's case. But while researching the boyfriend's case, Gary discovered a much larger story when he came across a man by the name of Danilo Blandone. Danilo Blandone was a huge cocaine dealer in Los Angeles in the early 80s and had been the leader of the Contras in California. The Contras were a Nicaraguan guerrilla army formed in 1979 to overthrow the government in Nicaragua. The Nicaraguan government had been taken over by revolutionary socialists. The United States saw this new Nicaraguan government as a threat to the U.S., so the CIA created the Contras to help rebels overthrow the new Nicaraguan government. President Ronald Reagan signed an order authorizing the CIA to use $19 million to set up U.S. training and funding for the Contras. But $19 million wasn't enough to overthrow a government. The CIA needed more money. This information was found buried in pages of U.S. Senate documents that Gary Webb discovered during his investigation. During his investigation, Gary also found that Danilo Blandone, who was originally from Nicaragua and had fled to California during the war, had testified in court that all the cocaine he was trafficking in L.A. during the 80s was to get money and weapons for the Contras fighting in Nicaragua. The Contras, who were created by the CIA. This began Gary Webb's year-long investigation to find the truth behind the CIA's connection to drug trafficking. What he discovered in that year was that for almost a decade, a San Francisco Bay Area drug ring that was ran by two Contra leaders, one of them being Danilo Blandone, was responsible for selling tons of cocaine to Los Angeles street gangs. The money made from the drugs being sold in L.A. was then funneled to the Contras in Nicaragua and used for training and to buy weapons. But to get the drugs into LA, Danilo Blandone had help. Gary Webb found court documents in which Blandone listed former Los Angeles drug dealer Freeway Rick Ross as his LA contact. Blandone told the DEA that he was selling Rick Ross up to 100 kilos of cocaine a week, which was between $65 and $130 million worth of cocaine every year. That cocaine was then turned into crack and distributed to Blood and Crip gangs in the area who sold the crack on the streets. Danilo Blandone said he targeted Los Angeles ghettos because the areas were untapped markets. He bragged that in the 10 years he was selling cocaine in LA, he had sold so many kilos that he couldn't even remember the exact amount. This flood of cocaine is believed to be what helped spark the crack epidemic in urban America. But Danilo Blandone also testified that he didn't plan on becoming a dope dealer when he fled to California from Nicaragua. He insisted he did it out of patriotism to raise money for the CIA's Contras, and that all the profits that came out of LA went to the Contras army. Gary Webb wasn't able to prove the exact amount of money sent to the Contras, but he did show proof that Danilo Blandone made millions of dollars while supplying the streets of Los Angeles. At the end of Gary Webb's year-long investigation, he put all this information that he discovered into a 3-part series of stories titled Dark Alliance, the story behind the crack explosion. Gary brought these stories to his editors at the Mercury News, who reviewed, edited, and then approved them for print. And in the summer of 1996, Dark Alliance was published. But this wasn't the first time reporters had written about the CIA being involved in drug trafficking. Reporters from 2 major newspapers had written stories about it 10 years before Dark Alliance was published. The difference is Gary Webb's Dark Alliance connected the CIA's drug involvement to gang-affiliated drug dealers and the crack epidemic in black neighborhoods. To prove this connection, Gary Webb's articles listed numerous government documents, including FBI and DEA reports, witness testimonies, and a pipeline that showed how money and drugs got in and out of the country. This information outraged everyone who read it. The CIA denied any involvement with Danilo Blandone and his cocaine dealing, while the communities of South Los Angeles demanded answers.
And the reason I'm so outraged by it, as a public elected officials, all of us must be concerned that our government could have anyway been involved in drug trafficking. Drug trafficking. That's a very, very serious offense against the people of this nation.
Then there were the competing news outlets, who immediately went to work to discredit Gary Webb's stories. Gary's critics pointed out the flaws in Dark Alliance, such as its inability to prove exactly how much money was sent to the Contras, and the fact that the Dark Alliance used the testimonies of drug dealers as witnesses and couldn't identify any specific CIA agents involved in the selling of drugs who could corroborate the story. Gary Webb was also accused of oversimplifying how the crack epidemic grew in America, as critics argued that in no way could the CIA be solely to blame for the spread of crack cocaine across the country. As Gary Webb was being dragged through the media, it became clear that many who read the Dark Alliance misinterpreted parts of the story. So Gary spoke out to clarify any misconceptions. He pointed out that his stories didn't say CIA agents were dealing drugs, nor did they say the CIA masterminded a crack cocaine epidemic. What they did say was drug traffickers linked to the CIA-backed Contras sold tons of cocaine in Southern California to help finance the guerrilla war in Nicaragua.
The Contras were a creation of the CIA, and so when our story came out saying that the Contras were dealing drugs in Los Angeles and elsewhere, and that these drug traffickers were meeting with CIA agents, a lot of people took that to say the CIA created the crack epidemic, which is clearly not the case. But the impact of it was that when you had all this cheap cocaine going into South Central Los Angeles,
Peace. I've got everything you need, lone traveler. It's in the mothership. Back there.
Thanks, man. Look, here go your paper.
The karmic circle closes. All is as it should be. Back to the egg.
Damn, man, there must be 2 tons of that stuff back there.
3 Rama. What the fuck's that noise?
Hey, that sound like a chopper.
Oh, man. Narcs. You fucking rat.
Dude, don't put that on me. You the one deal with Tenpenny. What's all this?
Calm, brother. Panic paves the way to bad karma.
Man.
We gotta torch those fields. I only hope Kaya can forgive us.
Assholes. Right-wing assholes.
I don't feel too good.
It's a crying shame, ain't it?
No, I think I'm gonna black out.
Fight the ocean and you will drown, brother. Carl, man, we'll take the mothership and get our shit out of here.
Go get her fired up. I'll finish burning and I'll follow you. got a chopper on our tail. We'll never shake them now.
Hold on. I got a little something back here I was saving for a rainy day.
Holy motherfucker. Where'd you get that?
Found it in a bale of tie sticks. Shame, really. I was gonna make it into a lamp.
Nightmare Smith.
What you pull over for?
You better drive. I haven't driven in 15 years.
You was doing all right?
Yeah? Then the fear hit me. Now I'm rolling a number to calm the waves.
Shit, I better call Caesar. Hey, Caesar, no time to talk, man. I'm on my way to San Fierro, okay? I'll meet you and Kendall at that garage I won at the races. Holla at y'all later. What's with all the aluminum foil, man?
Protection from mind control, dude.
Mind control.
Induction of images, sound, or emotion using microwave radiation. Do you know how many government satellites are watching any citizen at any moment?
No.
23. Do you know how many religious relics are kept at the Pentagon?
No, I don't.
23. You see a pattern emerging here, man?
Man, I'm seeing patterns all over the place. Get that smoke out my face.
Hey, you want to hit on this? A little temple chairs and a cocktail with some Nepalese munga munga.
Put that thing out, man. I can't see.
Mellow out, brother. It's good shit.
Put it out, motherfucker. I'm warning you.
Whoa, chill.
Angeles, right at the time people were figuring out how to take this powder cocaine and turn it into crack, you had sort of a collision of historical events. And what happened from that was you had the spread of crack nationwide because the gangs spread nationwide. The gangs, after the LA market got saturated, took this to other cities and set up crack markets in
Sorry,
other
man. I
cities
just
that
don't
didn't have
drive
them.
when I'm faded.
But even Gary Webb's explanations couldn't stop the attacks against him. The criticism and backlash from Dark
Chief!
Alliance was so bad, his own newspaper editors, who originally supported the stories, turned their backs on him. The Mercury News published an apology where they basically agreed with Gary Webb's critics. Gary Webb
We
publicly
screwed. When'd you get
disagreed,
1967.
and he wrote several
How you
follow-up
get around
stories
if you don't
showing
drive?
more proof of
I
the
have an astral
connection.
goat called
but
Herbie.
none of his stories
She's
were
faster than
published.
most, but getting old.
Yeah, whatever,
10
man.
months
You
after the
talking
Dark
shit.
Alliance was released, Gary Webb's career as an investigative journalist was over, and his reputation destroyed.
Hey, this thing go any faster?
Man,
But Gary
we got
Webb
3
didn't
tons
stop.
of grass on
He
board.
continued
The
to
engine
work
block is
to
held
finish
together
what
with a
he'd
macrame
started.
hammock, and it's running
In
on
1998,
15
he
cooking
released
oil.
the book Dark
Shit,
Alliance,
can you shoot?
the CIA,
Sure, I'm a
the
hippie.
Contras,
The only thing
and the
I've
crack
shot is
cocaine
acid.
explosion.
I heard about this dude's
548
Thought his
pages of
nose was a
information
kangaroo and the moon
proving
was a dog.
his original
Woo!
investigation. With so much evidence showing a connection between drug trafficking and the U.S.
There
government,
she is, brother.
the CIA
San
was
Fierro,
forced to release
city
the report.
Of psychedelic wonders.
In
Man, I
1998,
can't believe I ain't been
CIA
here
Inspector
before.
General
There ain't a
Frederick
better place
Hitz
to escape
released a
the man,
statement
man.
Okay,
saying
Mr. San
that the
Fierro,
CIA
where's the
had
spot
no
at?
connection to
It's in
Danilo
Doherty, on
Blandon,
the east side of
and that
Fierro,
no
between Garcia
specific
and
CIA
Eastern Basin.
agents were involved in the selling of drugs in Los Angeles for the Contras. He did, however, admit that the CIA had relationships with drug traffickers who had connections to the Contras. and that instead of the CIA cutting off relationships with these individuals known to be selling drugs, the CIA looked the other way. The report also revealed the existence of a CIA memo that revealed the agency had agreed how important it was to keep all this information quiet. After the report came out that the CIA did have some knowledge of the Contra's connection to drug trafficking, nothing happened, and there was little vindication for Gary Webb. No apologies from the news outlets who'd attacked him. No big newspaper headlines announcing that the Dark Alliance was more or less right and the CIA had confessed it. No CIA arrests. Nothing. The main person affected by Gary Webb's investigation was himself. Gary Webb's former wife said in interviews that after the fallout from Dark Alliance, Gary was never the same. He eventually fell into money troubles and depression. In December 2004, Gary Webb was found dead at the age of 49 from 2 gunshot wounds to the head.
Oh, Jesus, dude.
Police
Looks like
ruled
you've
his
been
death
kinda
as
bummer.
suicide. But having died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head, many were quick to speculate that Gary Webb might have been murdered by the CIA. But his family confirmed that shortly before his death, Gary wrote and mailed letters to his ex-wife, his children, his mother, and his brother. He'd also updated his will. And the day of his death, he set out his Social Security card next to his suicide note. And on the front side of his door, he stuck a note that read, "Please do not enter. Call 911. The Sacramento County Coroner's Report also gave an official explanation into Gary Webb's 2 gunshot.
Motherfucker! That mute asshole, that fucking snake without a tongue, gave me this shithole instead of a pink slip. I must be the biggest fucking idiot in the whole fucking world.
Holmes, take it easy. At least we're alive.
Carl, friend, fellow traveler, relax, man. You're really killing my fucking vibe here.
Well, I'm sorry I'm fucking up your vibe, old man, but I can't wait to get my hands on that mute and your bitch-ass cousin.
My cousin? You're gonna diss my familia?
My bad, man. I'm just pissed for all of us. I mean, look, we in a strange place. We got shit to our name, and for once, I try to make something work this garage, and it ain't even a garage.
Then make it into a garage.
Oh, that's a great idea, sis. Won't you shut up?
You know what, Carl? You are a fucking idiot. Your whole life you wanted something for nothing. Now you've got something and you don't know what to do with it. We'll make it good enough. We'll help, right?
We got your back, CJ.
Come on, stop tripping, man. Both of you.
Whoa, man, the energy here, it's fantastic. Oh.
Yeah, all right. But how I'ma find some good mechanics to work up in here, man?
I know a few guys. Come with me, friend. They're good people, I swear it.
Oh, man, I'm about to ride with this fool again.
Come on, man. There's these 2 guys I know. Used to work on marine engines. Till the mob bought their business over in Vice. Now they try and make ends meet by taking any old job. They're a little bit dull by their habit, but the smoke don't get in the way of their skills with an engine. We'll pick up Jethro first. Last I heard, he was working at a garage over in East Basin.
Gunshot wounds, stating there were 2 gunshot wounds because the first one was off target and went through his cheek, so he fired again.
Hey, man, how you meet these dudes anyway?
In the years since
Met
his
them at
death,
the 89th year
Gary
London.
Webb's work has not been forgotten.
You know how it is,
In
man.
2006,
Field
Gary's
of tents,
colleague and
crazy
fellow
ass
investigative
music,
journalist
a quart
Nick
of
Chow
mescaline
wrote the
vodka,
book,
polar bears.
Kill the Messenger,
Polar bears.
How the CIA's
figure.
crack cocaine controversy
Funny guys, man.
destroyed
Big sense of
journalist
humor.
Gary Webb. The book digs deeper into the CIA controversy with more evidence, but it also gives a deeper look into Gary Webb, the man behind the story, with interviews from family, friends, and co-workers, who describe Gary as being a good father and friend, but also as a man who took his job very serious and always fought for the truth. The war between the Nicaraguan government and the Contras came to an end with a ceasefire in 1990. Freeway Rick Ross, who had no idea about Danilo Blandon's connection to the CIA and drug trafficking, was eventually arrested during a sting operation in 1995 when he went to pick up $1 million worth of cocaine.
This here's Vietnamese
The man
gang
who set up
territory.
Rick Ross in the sting
Gang boys,
operation
shining
was
razors,
Danilo
butterfly
Blandon.
children. Watch yourself, dude.
Rick Ross
These
was
cats
sentenced
are
to
real
life
serious.
without the possibility of parole. That sentence was shortened on appeal, and he was released in 2009 after serving 20 years. Danilo Blandon was also arrested in 1991, but 2 years later, he was released when it was determined by the government that he was,
Jethro.
quote, extraordinarily valuable in major
Hop in,
DEA
man. I'm
investigations
glad you a real job.
and should not be in prison.
Truth dude.
He later became a top government informant for
Do
the
I
DEA.
owe you? Because I swear I paid for that.
It's now
weed,
been over
dude.
25
No, man, we're
years
good.
since Dark Alliance was
Thank-
published.
Jethro, Carl.
And although
Carl,
some people
Jethro.
still debate
What's up, man?
on exactly how
swing
much
by
the
the
U.S.
hospital?
government was
It's over in
involved in
Santa
drug
Flora
trafficking,
district, west of
it's
here.
known
Yeah.
that there was a connection
Sick?
between the
No,
CIA
the
and the
government
drugs that
is,
were being brought
but that's
into
a long
South
story.
L.A. in the 1980s.
So, you know, like, what's the deal?
And this is
dudes?
known because of the
I'm
Dark
opening the
Alliance
garage and doors
stories.
by the waist ground.
The Dark Alliance
You know,
forced the
car
CIA to
rides,
admit
low
to the
riders, all
public
that
what they
shit.
had been trying to
Damn,
hide for
polar
years,
bear shit
which had
in
it
the
not been
woods.
for Gary Webb,
No,
might
they've
never
been known to
have
shit in the
happened.
liquor tent, if I remember it right.
Yeah, that was like so far gone, man.
How many times have you been traveling and need to know if there's a mass nearby, and at what time? That's exactly what the Mass Times app is for, which already has many active users.
1,600,000 downloads so far, but we still have a lot of room to grow, thank God.
And grow it did. 1 year after this interview, the global Mass Times app downloads surpassed 2 million users. The initial idea from this Argentinian has grown so much that he feels very proud of the product.
Es que empezamos hace 10 años.
We started 10 years ago. We started in Buenos Aires with only 200 or 300 churches in the city, and it grew little by little with a lot of effort. Users themselves sent us more information and recommendations, and that's how it grew.
The app is simple and accessible to everyone. It's available in 9 languages and shows schedules of adoration hours, confessions, and the closest masses. The schedule information comes from the users themselves. Now, even in the most difficult to access places, faithful can find the nearest church to attend.
What we here for anyway?
Nothing. Oh, don't look. Cover your faces. Think about a yellow rubber duck.
You tripping again.
Shh.
The Pharaoh. The
Okay,
Pharaoh of Exodus
I've
stands
seen enough.
as an
Let's go
archetypal
see if we can
oppressor
find
in
Wade.
biblical narrative, yet
He's
the text
working a
never
hot
explicitly
dog
labels
van
him
at
as
the tram
evil.
terminal
Instead,
in
his
Kings.
malevolence unfolds through
Come
a
on, dude, what's all
cascade
that about?
of
You don't
destructive
wanna know.
decisions.
Why?
This tyranny begins with a new Pharaoh who did not know Joseph, Exodus 1 verse 8, signaling a shift from a period of
Do you know
favor
what a
for the
subdermal
Israelites.
neurophone is?
His escalating fear of their
Do you know
burgeoning
what a
numbers
subdermal
compels him
neurophone
to
is?
impose brutal
What?
enslavement,
Exactly.
forcing them to
Sometimes
construct
it's
supply
best to stay
cities
in the
like
dark,
Pithom
kid.
and Ramses, Exodus 1 verse 11. The pinnacle of his cruelty arrives with the chilling decree to murder every newborn Hebrew boy, casting them into the Nile River, Exodus 1 verse 22. Pharaoh's wickedness is compounded by his stubbornness. Despite facing 10 progressively devastating plagues, ranging from water turning to blood to the death of the firstborn, he repeatedly hardens his heart. This phrase, resonating throughout the narrative, signifies not merely obstinacy, but an active defiance against divine will, ironically leading to immense suffering for his own people. The locust plague that devours all crops in Egypt, Exodus 10 verse 15, and the 3 days of darkness that blanket the land, Exodus 10, verse 22, fail to sway his resolve.
Dwayne,
Pharaoh's evil
man,
lies
how's
and his
hot dog
systematic
business?
oppression, deliberate disobedience to God's command, and his arrogance,
totally
which collectively
shit.
bring about
Why?
widespread
What's
disaster.
happening?
The narrator
my
skillfully
friend
portrays
Carl
this
here
through
is
his
opening a
actions
chop
and their
shop.
dire
Jethro's
consequences,
in.
rather
How
than
about
with
you?
a single direct
Yeah,
label.
cool, man. I've got,
Laban.
like, some shit to
Laban,
take
Jacob's
care of
maternal
first, though.
uncle and later
So,
father-in-law,
you
presents
tell me
a
where
clear
you guys are gonna
portrait
be
of a
at, and I'll meet you
deceitful and
dudes there.
manipulative character.
Garage is on the way,
Yet the
grounds
narrator in the
aboard.
book of
I'll see
Genesis
y'all
never
later.
explicitly calls him evil. His story intertwines with
Okay,
Jacob's flight from
next
Esau
stop,
and his
cop
search for
station
refuge in
downtown.
Haran,
What?
Genesis
You lost
29.
your mind.
From the outset,
Why?
Laban's
If I
motives
told
appear
you, the
driven by
likelihood
material
is you'd get a
gain rather
probe up
than
your ass within a
genuine
month.
familial bonds.
Listen to the man, dude.
After Jacob
He's
toils
real
for 7 years
serious
for
about
Rachel,
that shit.
Laban cunningly
Wow.
tricks him on
Okay.
the wedding
She's
night,
starting to freak me out
substituting
with all that
Leah,
space
Rachel's
shit,
older
man.
sister, under the pretext that it is not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Genesis 29, verse 26. This deception forces Jacob into another 7 years of servitude. Throughout Jacob's 2-decade stay with Laban, the pattern of exploitation and dishonesty persists. Jacob himself testifies that Laban had changed my wages 10 times. Genesis 31, 741. Laban would arbitrarily alter the terms of their agreement regarding the livestock that would belong to Jacob, always aiming to ensure he retained the larger share. For instance, if Jacob was to receive the spotted animals, Laban would immediately separate them. Genesis 30, verse 35 to 36.
Okay,
Greed and a
you
desire
know
for
the
control
drill.
consistently
Don't look
fuel
interested in
Laban's
anything.
actions. Even when Jacob finally decides to
Picture a
leave,
pink
Laban
golf
pursues him
ball
with an
in your mind.
overbearing sense of ownership and suspicion,
Okay,
accusing Jacob
we're
of
good to go.
stealing his household
to
gods,
next,
Genesis
spacehead?
31,
There's an
verse
electronics
22
guy
to
I've had
30,
dealings with.
an
Goes by the
accusation
name
later
of
proven
Zero.
false.
He could fix
Laban's
a
manipulative and
supercomputer with a
exploitative
paperclip.
nature is
He's got his
vividly
own shop,
conveyed through
but
his
he's always
behavior,
ready to help
leaving a
fellow
distinctly
travelers
negative
fall in the
impression
path.
without the
Let's go
narrator
introduce
ever
you
needing
to
to apply the label
Look,
evil.
what's going on, True? Who was
Potiphar's
the dude?
wife.
Don't
Potiphar's
go there.
wife emerges as an
Listen to
antagonistic
Jethro.
figure
Now,
whose
what if
actions
I
trigger
told you we
profound
never went to the
consequences for
moon?
Joseph,
JFK
yet she
lives
is
in
never
Scotland with
explicitly
Janis
termed
Joplin.
evil by the
And
narrator
only
in the
reason
book of
we've been in a
Genesis.
Cold War for the last
Her pivotal role
45
unfolds
years
in
was
Genesis
because
39,
snake
where
hit
Joseph,
aliens
having
from
been
their oil
blessed by
business.
God,
I
has
think
become
you
the
popped another
overseer of
micro
Potiphar's household,
Good.
a
Keep it
high-ranking
that way.
Egyptian official. Her wickedness stems from lust and a sense of entitlement. She repeatedly attempts to seduce Joseph, described as handsome in form and appearance in Genesis 39, verse 6. Joseph, demonstrating remarkable moral integrity, resists her advances, declaring he would not do this great evil and sin against God. Genesis 39, verse 9. Joseph's persistent rejections ignite a vengeful fury in Potiphar's wife. One day, finding no one else in the house, she forcefully grasps Joseph's cloak. Joseph flees, leaving his garment in her hand. Feeling humiliated and scorned, she quickly fabricates a story. She summons her servants and, with feigned distress, accuses Joseph of attempted rape, using his cloak as proof. Genesis 39, verse 14 to 15. She then relays the identical falsehood to her husband, Potiphar. Genesis 39, verse 17 to 18. This false accusation is a profoundly harmful and unjust act, leading to Joseph's wrongful imprisonment. The evil of Potiphar's wife lies in her manipulation, slander, and abuse of power to destroy an innocent man's reputation and freedom. The narrative allows these actions to expose her character without resorting to a direct label of evil.
This is stalking. Oh,
Delilah.
Hey, True.
Delilah holds
Get
a crucial
in.
position
I'll
in the
fill you in
downfall
as we
of
drive.
Samson,
Home,
the
James.
Israelite hero. Yet the narrator in the book of Judges
Carl,
never explicitly
zero.
calls
Zero,
her
Carl.
evil.
What's up?
Her
Carl here
narrative
is opening a
unfolds in
garage
Judges
around the
16,
corner.
where
I
Delilah
told
is
him you're the
presented
man
as
to
a
speak
woman
to when it
from the
comes to
valley of
electronics.
Sorek, whom Samson loved.
Actually,
Her
I'm the
antagonistic
only
role
man
is
to speak to.
entirely driven by financial
Grade
gain.
A
The Philistine
tip-top
lords
genius,
approach her,
that's me.
offering a substantial
You
sum
should
of
drop by the
silver,
shop sometime.
1,100
See
pieces
some
of
of my
silver
shit,
from
bro.
each lord,
I'll
Judges
do that.
16, verse 5, if she could uncover the secret of Samson's immense strength. Despite Samson repeatedly deceiving her with false clues about the source of his power, Delilah persistently presses him. Her emotional manipulation is palpable, and when she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. Judges 16, verse 16.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
highlights her cruel use of emotional coercion to achieve her objective. Finally, an exhausted Samson
of hard
reveals
work,
his secret. His
and we'll
unshorn
transform this
hair is the
place.
source of his
Hey,
strength.
Caesar, come
Delilah
over
then
here.
acts swiftly, summoning the
What's up, B?
Philistines,
Caesar,
shaving
this
Samson's hair
Jethro,
while he sleeps,
Dwayne,
and handing him over.
man.
This act of betrayal is a clear
Salutations,
transgression, leading to Samson's
Orderly,
loss
let's
of
get to
strength,
work.
capture, blinding, and
Hey, Carl,
enslavement.
look,
Delilah's
I think I
wickedness
found a way for us
centers
to
on her
get
profound
paid.
I
betrayal
ain't
of
going to
trust,
no college to
motivated by
study no
financial
accounting.
greed,
No,
which
idiot,
directly
property.
causes the hero's
Decorating
ruin.
ain't
The
exactly my
narrator
thing
allows
either.
these
No,
treacherous
property
actions to fully
development.
define her
Look,
character
you buy a dump
rather
like
than
this,
applying a
fix it
direct
up,
label.
and sell it. Or better yet,
King
you turn the property
Ahasuerus,
into a
King
business.
Ahasuerus,
The
the
snowball
powerful
gets
ruler
bigger.
of the
I don't
vast
know,
Persian
sis. This
Empire
all
in the
sound
book of
big time
Esther,
to me.
Look,
is
Carl,
depicted
this
as
place is gonna get on
indecisive,
its feet,
easily
and when it
swayed,
does,
and
we are
prone
gonna
to
have
rash
money.
decisions
If you wanna
rather
make
than being
something of
explicitly
yourself,
called
you gotta let your
evil
money
by the
work
narrator.
for you.
Although a monarch of immense power,
I
his
wouldn't
character
even know
tends
a
to be
story.
passive
Look,
and
you two
reactive to the
concentrate on
advice
the
of those
garage
around
and let
him.
me
For instance,
work the
he dismisses
property thing,
Queen
okay?
Vashti for refusing
Yeah,
his
that's my
command
baby
to
girl
appear
right there,
publicly,
Holmes.
a decision
Man, you
spurred by
chose
his
her. I'm stuck
advisor's
with her.
concerns about spousal authority, Esther 1 verse 12 to 20. The king's culpability
Hey, Caesar,
lies
what
in
up?
his negligence and lack of moral discernment in decision-making. When Haman, his ambitious and vengeful prime minister, proposes a decree to annihilate all Jews throughout the
Okay, I'll
empire,
keep an eye out for 'em.
Ahasuerus
See if I
readily
can't
agrees. He
spoil they
hands
little
his
pork.
signet ring to
All right,
Haman,
man.
granting him full authority to execute his genocidal plan without showing significant concern for the details or implications, Esther 3, verse 10 to 11.
Yeah,
He
what?
seems more captivated by lavish banquets and
Zero?
entertainment than
Nah,
by
man, good
justice
to hear
or the
from you. What's
welfare of
up?
his subjects. The
The
king's eventual change of heart, which ultimately saves the Jews, is more a consequence of Esther and Mordecai's shrewd
I'm looking to
manipulation
invest in some
than any
property at the
inherent
moment.
moral
Maybe
initiative
I'll
of his
swing
own.
by.
While he eventually executes Haman, this is a reaction to the revelation that Haman's plot also endangered his own queen, Esther 7 verse 7 to 10. Ahasuerus' evil is one of inaction and complicity, a failure to lead wisely, a moral void, and his willingness to delegate power to truly wicked individuals like Haman, who is ironically called the evil Haman by Esther, Esther 7 verse 6. Abimelech. Abimelech, Gideon's son by his concubine in Shechem, is a figure whose actions are brutally cruel and murderous, yet the narrator in the book of Judges never explicitly labels him evil or wicked. His story in Judges 9 is one of the darkest episodes in the biblical narrative. Driven by boundless ambition and a thirst for power, Abimelech engineers a brutal coup after his father's death. He travels to Shechem and convinces its citizens to make him king, arguing that it's better for one man to rule than Gideon's 70 sons. Judges 9 verse 2. To secure his position, Abimelech then commits a horrific massacre. He goes to Ophrah, his father's home, and killed his 70 brothers on one stone, with only Jotham, Gideon's youngest son, managing to escape. Judges 9 verse 5. This act of familial genocide is an unforgivable and utterly heinous crime. Jotham subsequently delivers a powerful parable, the fable of the trees choosing a king, to condemn Abimelech's actions and foreshadow the coming consequences. Judges 9 verse 7 to 20. Throughout his brief reign, Abimelech rules with an iron fist, instigating internal conflict and perpetrating further atrocities such as burning down the Tower of Shechem and killing its inhabitants. Judges 9 verse 46 to 49. Abimelech's wickedness lies in his mass murder for power, his tyranny, and his extreme cruelty. While his deeds undeniably reveal an evil character, the narrator allows the horror of his actions to speak for themselves regarding his nature. Jezebel. Jezebel stands as one of the most infamously wicked female figures in biblical history, her name becoming synonymous with depravity and idolatry, while her husband, King Ahab, is described as doing more evil in the eyes of the Lord than all the kings of Israel before him. 1 Kings 16, verse 30, and it's specifically noted that there was no one who sold himself to do what was evil in the sight of the Lord, like Ahab, whom Jezebel, his wife, incited. 1 Kings 21, verse 25. The direct label of evil is not applied to Jezebel herself. Jezebel's malevolence manifests in several dimensions. First, she is a zealous devotee of Baal worship and aggressively promotes these foreign deities in Israel, even going so far as to kill the Lord's prophets. 1 Kings 18, verse 4. This is a direct violation of God's covenant with Israel. Second, she is a ruthless manipulator and murderer. The story of Naboth, 1 Kings 21, is the clearest illustration of her depravity. When Ahab covets Naboth's vineyard and Naboth refused to sell it, Jezebel cynically retorts, are you now king over Israel? Arise and eat food and let your heart be cheerful. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. 1 Kings 21, verse 7. She then forges letters in Ahab's name, ordering the city elders to falsely accuse Naboth and stone him to death. Jezebel's wickedness stems from her role as the driving force behind idolatry, her merciless cruelty, and her willingness to misuse power to murder an innocent man for greed. Though her name has become synonymous with evil, the biblical narrator allows these heinous actions to fully expose her character. Cain, the firstborn son of Adam and Eve, represents humanity's inaugural act of evil according to the biblical account, yet he is never explicitly called evil by the narrator in the book of Genesis. His story in Genesis 4 is a cautionary tale about sin and its dire consequences. After Abel's offering is accepted by the Lord, while Cain's is not, Cain is consumed by intense jealousy and rage. The Lord warns him directly, "Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." Genesis 4, verse 6 to 7. This is a stark admonition about the lurking danger of sin. However, Cain disregards this warning. He allows his anger and envy to overwhelm him. He invites his brother Abel out to the field, and there he attacked his brother Abel and murdered him. Genesis 4, verse 8. This is the first homicide in biblical history, a monumental crime that fundamentally violates human life. Following the murder, Cain attempts to conceal his wrongdoing, answering the Lord's query about Abel with, "I do not know, am I my brother's keeper?" Genesis 4, verse 9, revealing a lack of remorse and evasiveness. While Cain's act is a deliberate, malice-driven murder, the biblical narrator focuses on the deed itself and its repercussions, Cain's curse and wandering, rather than directly labeling Cain as evil. This approach illustrates how evil is often defined by the actions themselves and their destructive impact. Absalom, King David's son, was a charismatic and ambitious figure, yet he emerged as a major antagonist in the rebellion against his father, even though the narrator never explicitly labels him evil. His story unfolds across 2 Samuel 13 to 18. Absalom's descent into depravity begins with his vengeance for his sister Tamar's rape by Amnon. Absalom murders Amnon in retaliation, 2 Samuel 13, verse 28 to 29. However, upon his return from exile, his ambition swells beyond mere justice. Absalom shrewdly embarks on a campaign to win the people's hearts. He would rise early, stand by the city gate, and when people came with legal disputes, he would greet them, claim the king was too busy for them, and declare, "Oh, that I were appointed judge in the land. Then every man with a dispute or a cause could come to me, and I would assure him justice." 2 Samuel 15, verse 4. Through this strategy, he successfully stole the hearts of the men of Israel, 2 Samuel 15, verse 6. The climax is his open rebellion against David, his father, and the anointed king. He not only seeks to usurp the throne, but also publicly shames David by sleeping with his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel, on Ahithophel's advice, 2 Samuel 16, verse 20 to 22. This act is a profound insult and a calculated evil designed to ensure David's inability to return. Absalom's wickedness lies in his betrayal of both father and king, his destructive ambition, and the shameful acts committed for power. While his actions clearly demonstrate malevolence, the narrator allows the reader to draw conclusions from the dramatic sequence of events. Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' 12 disciples, is eternally infamous for his betrayal that led to Jesus' crucifixion, yet the gospel narrators never directly label him as evil as a descriptive adjective for his person. Instead, the gospels focus on his actions and his role within the divine plan. Judas, as part of Jesus' inner circle, held a unique position of access and trust. However, the Gospel of John notes that he was a thief and would often take from the money bag, John 12:6, hinting at a fundamental character flaw. His ultimate betrayal is his agreement with the chief priest to hand over Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, Matthew 26, verse 14 to 16. He then identifies Jesus to the soldiers with a kiss in Gethsemane, a chilling symbol of treachery, Matthew 26, verse 48 to 49. Jesus himself refers to Judas as a devil, John 6, verse 70, and the son of destruction, John 17, verse 12, indicating a deep-seated malevolent nature within him. However, these labels are more theological and descriptive of his destiny than direct moral descriptors by the narrator. Judas's subsequent remorse, which leads him to return the money and ultimately hang himself, Matthew 27, verse 3 to 5. tragically underscores the weight of his actions, even though he is not explicitly called evil by the narrator. Judas's wickedness lies in his profound betrayal of the most sacred trust, his surrender of the teacher for material gain, and his indispensable role in Jesus' death. The gospel narrators allow the tragedy and consequences of his actions to fully convey the depth of the evil he committed.
A unique rite takes place in St. Peter's Basilica on the Saturday of the first week of Lent, the exposition of the Holy Lance of St. Longinus. St. Peter's is the station church for this day in Lent. The Pontifical Academy Cultorum Martyrum Romanum is responsible for maintaining these traditions, honoring the martyrs throughout Rome.
Già dal titolo capiamo che il focus è...
From the title itself, we understand that the focus is to honor and study the martyrs. And this is the reason why, in the period of Lent, significantly for Rome, founded on the martyrs, we see that a 40-day lengthened journey that leads us to Easter is precisely a journey from church to church, and each time encountering, focusing our attention on the martyrs both of Rome and also outside Rome.
Sia di Roma sia anche di fuori Roma.
On this day in Lent, we have the gospel reading of the Transfiguration, where we have Peter, James, and John standing before Christ in glory, Moses and Elijah at the side showing that Christ is fulfilling the old law. He is the new law himself. And Peter, James, and John, St. John Chrysostom tells us that this scene for them was a strengthening in their belief in Christ's divinity so that they could go through the days of the Passion that were coming with strength and with belief. And so today also we hear something very interesting. We hear the words of St. Peter alone. He's the only one who speaks. He says, "Lord, it's good for us to be here."
The millions of pilgrims who pass through the doors of St. Peter's Basilica each year come across a powerful 5-meter statue carved by Gian Lorenzo Bernini of a man holding a long lance, a lance that popular and mystic culture names the Spear of Destiny. This man is immediately identifiable as the soldier who pierced Christ's side, recounted by St. John's eyewitness testimony.
So many pilgrims come into St. Peter's and they walk around and they don't know that inside a hidden little chapel is this special relic, which is the tip of the spear which pierced the side of Christ. And we call it the relic of St. Longinus, the soldier who pierced the side of Christ. And so on this day, in this special rite, it's brought out for the veneration by the faithful, by the priests present, to begin, again, these days of Lent in a way to orient us to the Passion of Christ and to his resurrection.
This very relic, safeguarded in St. Peter's Basilica since 1492, takes center stage during a liturgical ceremony at the start of the Lenten penitential season at the heart of the church.
È un rito tradizionale con
It is a traditional rite with oftentimes the use of the first Eucharistic prayer or Roman canon, and therefore with the invocation of the most significant martyr saints. In this case, for St. Peter, we move towards the canopy of St. Longinus, where the designated canons proceed to the blessing with the significant relic, which is the tip of the lance. And with this rite, the blessing is accompanied by a distinctive hymn, the Vexilla Regis, an ancient yet profoundly stirring chant, rich with emotion.
molto antico ma anche molto vibrante di emozione.
In a special way in St. Peter's, the faithful are guided to meditate upon the moment in which St. Longinus pierced the side of Christ.
We too, as pilgrims on this day, we come to the tomb of St. Peter, and we're able to say, St. Peter, you're here. We come and visit this lance of St. Longinus, which pierced the side of Christ. And we're already preparing ourselves for the Holy Triduum, for Good Friday, because this liturgy puts us already at the foot of the cross in anticipation. And we get to say with St. Peter, it's good for us to be here.
Cold Slither rose to fame with their #1 hit and seemed poised to take on the world. But after rumors of subliminal messages in their music, rumored links to international terrorist organizations, and a disastrous final concert, Cold Slither became just yet another one-hit wonder. This is Cold Slither Behind the Music.
We was swimming in groupies. It was all the chocolate donuts and grape soda you could ever want. It was the time, man.
We were bigger than the Beatles for like 1 hot minute.
God, we was rock stars. You turn on the radio and hear your music playing. It was amazing. They said all kinds of things about us, called us terrorists, brainwashers. We just wanted to rock.
The members of Cold Slither have stayed together and work in a gas station in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. We caught up with them to reminisce about their success.
We all grew up together. We were part of a biker gang. We bonded over our love of Harleys. We started playing together every day.
One day, Dave, that's Zartan, he says, let's make a rock band. We needed a name. We was trying to come up with a name that would stand out, something like Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses. I wanted to call us Chainsaws and Tulips, but the boys didn't like that one.
It was smack dab in the middle of the Joe Cobra Wars. It was all anybody could talk about. All the bands of the era, they were making music about Satan or Beelzebub or serial killers or smoking in the boys' room. Things that the squares would consider antisocial. So I was like, what's more antisocial than terrorism?
The thing is, Cobra weren't terrorists like we know terrorists now. Not like Al-Qaeda. They weren't pulling 9/11s and shit. They were trying to control the weather or create pyramids of darkness. Nothing too evil. I mean, the whole time I don't think a single person ever died. Still, they was really metal.
Everybody thought it was a great idea, so we called ourselves Cold Slither.
Got to admit, as much as I like Chainsaws and Tulips, it was a pretty rad nomiker.
The name proved indeed to be a good pick. Even to this day, you will still see t-shirts and patches bearing the logo, Cold Slither.
We were an overnight success. As soon as we cut the track, these music producer blokes signed us to a record deal. It was a dream come true.
We saw the potential right away. Their look, the logo, the music. They were the next big thing. But off stage, things were falling apart.
Zartan was a dickhead all the time. Always screaming at us, throwing temper tantrums.
I know it's not politically correct, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Zartan is a fucking schizo. The man is crazy. He don't even know who he is after time. It's like he got multiple personalities and all of my assholes.
I was the star, okay, so I thought we needed to do it my way. My idea, my band, my way.
Cold Slither dominated the airwaves. Kids walked out of classes to listen to the band's music. Parents started to notice. Rumors abounded that the band was connected to an international terrorist organization called Cobra, and the song was filled with subliminal messages telling kids to drop out of school and join the terrorists.
How is this even subliminal? It was obvious. We say you'll be joining us soon. We were saying we were going to own you. It was literally meant to be a recruiting video for Cobra. It was all pretend, of course. It was metal, man. That's how metal works.
It was the 80s. Everybody heard subliminal messages in everything. They were saying Dungeons and Dragons was a portal to Satan. We was playing it up because that's what you do in metal.
It was edgy. It was the most metal thing we could do. It's all just a marketing gimmick. Dumbass motherfucking rock critics took us seriously.
It just made it sell better. Come at us, keep saying we brainwashing kids. The kids loved it. It was a big f*** you to mom and dad.
Okay, we did have a few kids who did join Cobra, but hey, they're idiots. Who knows what they would have done with their lives? Probably joined some other terrorist organization, like Venom.
Yeah, totally, man. I joined Cobra because of Cold Slither. I was like, yeah, dude, how metal am I? I'm a terrorist. That wasn't until I lost both my legs in a trouble bubble accident. Now I am literally metal. F*** you, Cold Slither, you ruined my life! With the filming of their music video, the band earned a reputation as the new bad boys of rock.
We showed up to film and this real wanker of a movie director tried to tell us what to do.
No! Cut! It's all wrong. This is art, not exploitation. All right, let's do it again from the top.
He was wearing an ascot. I ain't listening to no one wearing no ascot. I got bored halfway. I'm thinking most bands tear apart their instruments. I wanted to do something better. I brought me chainsaw. The chainsaw gimmick worked, and the boys rocketed to the top of the charts. But the pressure of success began to eat away at the band. It all culminated in a disastrous concert that would end Cold Slither. This was a massive concert. We sold out an entire stadium. It was the biggest night of our lives. And one of Zartan's 15 personalities decided to have a little hissy fit. The rest of the band will never stop blaming me. I was sick. I came down with a cold, okay? I couldn't sing, but Extensive Enterprises told us we had to play no matter what. So I lip-synced once. Yeah, we played to the track. It was one time. And if old Zartan had kept playing, no one would have noticed we was Milli Vanilli in the whole show. I couldn't stand it. It was always about the music for me. So I left the stage. I didn't want to be a sellout. It was gonna fall apart anyway. We was all fighting all the time, you know, band drama. We was drinking lots of grape soda, if you know what I'm saying. To make the night worse, Ripper was assaulted by 3 fans. We go backstage and there's these 3 groovy-looking groupies. I mean, totally hot. I think I'm gonna have myself a nice little time. But no, they beat the living shit out of us. Not gonna say I didn't like it, but I usually like to get off after I have to go rough me up a little. They just left us hanging. The worst part is, after we left the concert, they had to fill the space. They got the most milquetoast bullshit band you ever heard, the Average Joe's Band. They suck so hard. This was an audience there to see metal. You can't put that bullshit in front of a metal audience. Cold Slither's record company dropped them the next week. Now, several decades later, the members of Cold Slither have returned to the gas station where they once rehearsed. Tom battled with an addiction to grape soda and chocolate donuts. I was brushing my teeth with this shit. Can't get enough of it. It turns out it's not good for you like my mom told me. Harry Nod is still traumatized by his assault. They beat the living shit out of us. Dick Blinken still plays music every day. I started a new band, Chainsaws and Tulips, but it didn't work out. Now I play drums for my girl Satin's band. We play the Snake Club on Tuesday nights. You should come see us. Dave Zartan wrestled with his demons and finally sought help. It turns out I was schizophrenic after all. The doctor put me on antipsychotics and I'm doing well now. I know who I am, and that's even more important than rock and roll. Cold Slither made history as a minor band of the 1980s, joining the lexicon of one-hit wonders. This has been Behind the Music, Cold Slither. And for more videos, subscribe to Destro is My Spirit Animal. And if you ever wondered what Snake Eyes is thinking, check out this video right here.
If there's a single moment you can point to as the death of the hippie dream, it's the evening of December 6th, 1969. On that day, 300,000 people descended on the Altamont Speedway, about an hour away from the San Francisco Bay, for a free concert featuring many of the biggest names of the 60s counterculture, including the headlining Rolling Stones. The concert was imagined as a West Coast version of Woodstock. It was to be a display of the rich hippie culture that had spawned out of San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district. It was imagined as further proof of the way that peace, love, and flower power could change the world. Instead, it was a catastrophe that Rolling Stone magazine dubbed rock and roll's worst day. Throughout the day-long concert, the supposedly peace-loving audience grew restless and violent, spurred on by a drunken cohort of Hell's Angels who had been hired to provide security for the event. By the time the Stones took the stage, tempers had come to a boiling point. 5,000 people were jammed to the edge of the stage in a massive crowd crush, and rowdy fans tried to climb on stage. Then came the darkest moment of the evening, and one of the darkest moments of the entire 60s rock movement. As Rolling Stone first reported it in 1970, a fight broke out in the middle of the Stones' performance of Sympathy for the Devil, a fight that resulted in the death of a man named Meredith Hunter at the hands of the Hells Angels. The moment is sometimes mythologized as part of rock music's sinister legacy, a karmic comeuppance for a movement that had been cavorting with the devil ever since its origins. From the supposed Faustian bargain that forms its founding myth to the moral panics that defined its first few decades, rock and roll music has a long and storied relationship with the devil. And in that context, the murder of Meredith Hunter as the Stones played a controversial song offering sympathy for the devil is a cautionary tale about playing around with dark powers. Or at least it would be if it were true. But like with so many of rock's supposed satanic connections, the truth is not quite so dramatic. The reporting in that Rolling Stone piece was just plain wrong. While a number of fights did break out during Sympathy for the Devil, causing the band to stop the song and restart, none of them led to Meredith Hunter's death. Meredith Hunter wouldn't die until several songs later, when another fight broke out during Under My Thumb. So unless Hunter's tragic death was karmic payment for routine 60s chauvinism, the Altamont Festival isn't a case of divine punishment. It's a case of poor event organization and a reflection of the fact that large groups of people tend to be dangerous places if they're not dealt with very carefully. In fact, the supposedly idyllic Woodstock Festival earlier that year had its own body count thanks to 2 overdoses and a teen who got run over by a tractor after falling asleep in a hayfield. And while this truth may strip some of the mystique from Sympathy for the Devil, the story of the song is no less interesting for it. In fact, that very sort of misconception-driven mystique helped inspire the creation of the song in the first place, and it remains a key reason why Sympathy for the Devil endures as one of rock's greatest triumphs to this very day. Let's take a closer look. Controversy has followed the Rolling Stones basically since they formed in 1962. The gritty sexual rock and roll that delivered them to fame stood as an affront to the deeply conservative Christian culture of mid-century England. Their manager in the early days, Andrew Loog Oldham, exacerbated this controversy by dressing the band with a messy, unkempt style that leaned into that edge. Before the Stones had ever sang a single word about Satan, they were already being decried as evil and satanic. These accusations only grew as the Stones developed a reputation for hard partying. In 1967, the band decided to poke fun at these accusations with an album satirically titled Their Satanic Majesty's Request. They were, of course, not satanic in any way. Most of their songs were about love and sex, experiences that are a fundamental part of human existence and have inspired art for millennia. Still, a conservative older generation was determined to label the Stones and their ilk as evil. This constant controversy and labeling would prove to be part of the inspiration for Sympathy for the Devil. Keith Richards explained in a 1971 interview with Rolling Stone, "Before, we were just innocent kids out for a good time. They're saying, they're evil, they're evil. Oh, I'm evil, really? So that makes you start thinking about evil. What is evil?" That question, what is evil, is something humankind has always been eager to explore. John Milton's Paradise Lost is an epic retelling of the biblical fall of man, written in blank verse and first published in 1667. It's one of the greatest touchstones for our modern conception of Lucifer, and it's a work that, by some interpretations, seems to offer up a sort of sympathy for the devil. While Milton's book is rooted in a Christianity that believes in Satan as absolute evil, the text itself explores Satan's inner motivations, framing him much more as a complex human than a paragon of absolute darkness. Many poets of the Romantic Age explicitly read Milton's Lucifer as the hero of the story. As William Blake wrote in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, the reason Milton wrote in fetters when he wrote of angels and God, and at liberty when of devils and hell, is because he was a true poet, and of the devil's party without knowing it. Blake was a poet, painter, and philosopher with his own complex vision of Christian morality. He viewed heaven and hell not as places of good and evil, but rather as representations of a duality of order and chaos that both existed within the human spirit, and were both necessary aspects of life. Much of Blake's view on morality was developed during a radical time as the French Revolution was in the process of turning meaning on its head and transforming the world forever. A generation later, a French poet named Charles Baudelaire would come out of this age of revolution with his own nuanced visions of the nature of evil. Most of Baudelaire's poetry was collected in a controversial book called Les Fleurs du Mal, The Flowers of Evil. Just like the Rolling Stones, Baudelaire's work was criticized for its decadence and sexuality, and just like Blake, Baudelaire's poetry interrogated the true nature of Satan and evil. One poem in particular, Les Litanies de Satan, inverts a Catholic liturgy into a prayer to Satan. Baudelaire's prayer, like Milton's poem, posits Satan as someone closer to humanity, someone who is constantly involved in all of the messy affairs of human life, rather than sitting and watching passively from a throne in the skies. This sharp criticism of the Catholic Church had Baudelaire's critics charging him with blasphemy, but it posed questions that inspired many in the generations to come, including, possibly, Mick Jagger. In a 1995 interview with Rolling Stone, Mick Jagger recalled that sympathy for the devil came from an old idea of Baudelaire's. While Jagger admitted that he doesn't remember the exact Baudelaire piece that inspired the song, I think Les Litanies de Satan is the likeliest culprit. But that's not the only literary influence. When Jagger wrote the song in 1968, he had just finished reading The Master and Margarita by Soviet author Mikhail Bulgakov. While most of Bulgakov's novel was written during the height of Stalinism in the 1930s, it didn't see the light of day until 1967. The novel tells a surreal and satirical story of Satan visiting the Soviet Union, interspersed with flashbacks to ancient Jerusalem, where Pontius Pilate is about to sentence Jesus Christ to death. That book inspired Jagger to put together his own take on Satan. This influence is clear in the first two verses of Sympathy for the Devil, which leap from Pontius Pilate to the Russian Revolution. Key literary influence on the structure of Jagger's piece, though it's much closer to home than Baudelaire or Bulgakov. In that same 1995 interview, Jagger said that he wrote the song sort of like a Bob Dylan song. Jagger admitted that everyone in the era looked up to Dylan's lyricism, and that's because Dylan was a master at pulling literary and historical allusions into pieces that were urgently modern, speaking to the unique political and cultural moment of the 1960s. He did so with a structure that eschewed the pop writing of the time. Many of Dylan's songs didn't really have choruses, but instead featured dense verses that each came to a simple, often repeated refrain at the end. This is exactly what Jagger and the Stones do on Sympathy for the Devil, with each verse ending on the same rhyming couplet. Into a familiar characterization of the devil, that of a playful, well-spoken trickster trying to deceive humankind. There are plenty of works out there that depict the devil as loving games and gambling, in particular, gambling for human souls. But while many of these culminate with a clear morality and end, Jagger's devil is a little more enigmatic, urging us all to guess at the true nature of his game. In the first two verses, it would seem the devil is simply an agent of chaos and violence. He claims credit for killing the Tsar and his ministers and depicts himself riding a tank in the Blitzkrieg. But as the song builds and grows to the third verse, Jagger introduces some uncertainty to the equation. Subtle, but essential to understanding the meaning of the song. Lucifer isn't playing a hand in encouraging the wars that constantly devastate the world. He's simply watching and enjoying. Jagger is declaring humankind's complicity in our own history of violence. In this way, Sympathy for the Devil seems to be in clear conversation with one Dylan song in particular, With God on Our Side. In that song, Dylan details a history of human violence and conquest, noting the way the perpetrators of this violence always justify it by saying they had God on their side. And then, in the last verse, Dylan makes his final declaration. If God really was on humanity's side, he would stop the next war. Sympathy for the Devil inverts this framework, but comes to the same conclusion. No divine force, whether benevolent or malevolent, is truly responsible for the state of human society. The world around us is the direct result of the actions of human beings. Jagger makes this clear with a lyric speaking directly to his own era. That line was written as "I shouted out who killed Kennedy," but as the Stones were working on the song, Robert Kennedy was assassinated, which only underlined the urgency of the lyrics. This verse exploring moral ambiguity gives way to a stilted, shrieking solo by Keith. I see this solo as an embodiment of Jagger's version of Lucifer. It's a slippery, twisting thing. Every time you think you have a grasp on what Richard's doing, he freezes and jumps away to another half lick. The result is something that feels disorienting and dangerous, but has a distinct and unmistakable allure to it. And out of this solo, Jagger erupts into the fourth verse, one that explicitly states everything he'd been hinting at throughout the song. Jagger's plea to have sympathy for the devil isn't a plea for the audience to associate themselves with pure evil. Instead, it's a plea to acknowledge that there is no such thing as pure evil, and that the true sources of destruction, tumult, and pain are humanity's own actions. And the song was written at a time when it was important to be asking these questions. All the exploration of moral ambiguity was created against a backdrop of political and cultural upheaval. The societal norms of an older generation were collapsing in the face of the baby boom, and a new generation was beginning to question the moral quality of institutions at the core of Western society. And they were right to question these institutions because so many of them were built on unjust and harmful hierarchies. One of the reasons why the Rolling Stones drew so much ire in their early days is because of these harmful hierarchies. Rock and roll scandalized conservatives so much because it had grown out of a black musical tradition. Some of rock's earliest moral panics grew out of the way the music broke down racial barriers and saw teens of different races dancing and socializing with each other. And while that stigma was slowly disappearing by 1968, racism was still very present in Western society. In fact, the Stones deliberately played on those racial biases when designing the sound of the song. In its early iterations, Jagger wrote the music for Sympathy for the Devil as something a lot more like the Dylan songs that had inspired it.
Nice to meet you. Hope you guessed my name.
But Keith Richards didn't think this sound was right, so the band started to play around with arrangements until they landed on the unique samba-inspired groove that drives the song. The Stones brought in Ghanaian percussionist Rocky Zadorno, aka Rocky Dijon, to play a conga groove throughout the piece. And while the core of that groove is a samba, it pulls influences beyond that as well, as Jagger told Rolling Stone.
The actual samba rhythm is a great one to sing on, but it's also got some other suggestions to it, an undercurrent of being primitive, because it is a primitive African, South American, Afro, whatever you call that rhythm. So to white people, it has a very sinister thing about it.
While I very much disagree with Jagger's use of the word primitive here, I think he makes a salient point about the way music from the global south can put white audiences on edge by pushing them out of their comfort zone and offering them musical frameworks they're not quite as familiar with. But just as those frameworks have an imagined edge, they also have an allure to them. That's what drew the Stones and their contemporaries to American blues in the first place. It was something different from the music their parents grew up on. For a young generation looking to find themselves, that difference was exciting. But for the older generation, it was scary. And more than any satanic compulsion, It's that fear of the other that has been behind so many of humanity's greatest crimes. The declaration of other cultures and identities as being heathens is one of the great drivers of suffering to this very day. Sympathy for the Devil is pulling influence from cultures that have literally been demonized over the years, and by doing so, the Stones were able to make a musical statement that matched Jagger's lyrical examination of evil and moral relativism. Put together, the result is one of the finest pieces in the Stones' catalog, and indeed one of the finest rock songs ever put to wax. When the Stones took the stage at Altamont to perform Sympathy for the Devil, they weren't petitioning dark forces on an auspicious day. They were singing a song about the complex nature of good and evil, and the struggle being waged within all of us, every day. And I think that context allows us to reframe the tragedy at Altamont in our heads. This was not some divine act of retribution. It was just another case of mankind's constant fallibility. Another story of optimistic and idealistic human vision collapsing in the face of the real and messy nature of humankind. Sympathy for the Devil is a masterful track, both in terms of its lyrical relevance and its musical structure. And while I delved deeply into the former in this video, my discussions on the latter were limited because, frankly, I'm no music theorist. I tend to focus more on the abstract ideas behind music and on placing it within a cultural and historical perspective that helps us better understand where the art we love fits within the grand and marvelous human experience. But if you're more interested in knowing which specific doots everyone played in the song, well, you'll be happy to hear that this video is a collaboration with my good friend and podcast co-host, Corey from 12 Tone. If you head on over to Corey's channel now, you can watch a theory-based analysis of the song that gets into the nitty-gritty of what the notes are and says the word pentatonic several times. Once you've watched that, you can head on over to Nebula and listen to an episode of our podcast Ghost Notes, where we talk about the experience of breaking down the song from each of our respective angles. It's a great little peek under the hood to see how each of our channels work, and a really fun conversation on a song that's impossible to say too much about. That episode is live on Nebula now, and will be up on all other podcast platforms next month. This sort of bonus early content is just a small part of everything that makes Nebula such an exciting place. Nebula is a prestige streaming platform full of creative and thoughtful content that you can't find anywhere else. It's got an ever-growing library of amazing originals to watch. Personally, I've been really enjoying the new show Abolish Everything, where comedians argue for pet peeves that they want banned from society. And there's so much more beyond that, from riveting historical documentaries to thought-provoking fiction originals to my own pieces like Polyphonic Magazine. And Nebula is super active in trying to innovate and redefine the ways that we think of streaming platforms. One of these innovations is Nebula's guest passes, which allow you to share videos with people that don't have Nebula subscriptions. So if there's an original you really think your buddies would like, or if you just want more people to join so you have somebody to talk jet lag with, then you can hand out some guest passes. Why not check it out? With my link, you can get 40% off an annual subscription, which means getting a whole library of incredible content for just $36 a year, or $3 a month. So head on over to go.nebula.tv/polyphonic and check out Abolish Everything now. I think you'll really dig it. And hey, thanks for watching.
Hello and welcome. One of the most enduring fringe narratives of the late 20th century surrounds the topic of unidentified flying objects. It emerged as a topic of interest in the 40s, and it has risen and faded in popularity since then. In the 90s, The X-Files and its UFO subplot kept the topic alive for a new generation. Nowadays, such objects have been rebranded as Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, or UAPs, which is a crappy acronym. I'm sticking with the classic UFO term, thank you very much. In comics, it's a subject that's been somewhat overlooked. That's likely because public interest was sporadic and short-lived. As a fad, it was unpredictable and intermittent. So that might be why comics never capitalized on UFOs. With that out of the way, let's look at a few series that were strictly UFO-related. Flying Saucers was a short-lived series published by Dell in 1967. Like with a lot of Dell material, it's pretty tame, but it has a certain level of charm. Everything is based on the myth of UFOs, rather than an examination of the phenomenon or actual eyewitness accounts. Every story is obviously fictional, with some tenuous foundation in the popular understanding of UFOs and aliens. The aliens that do appear are consistent in appearance and resemble the description of the infamous gray aliens, who entered public awareness in 1961. However, these aliens are white, not gray, a minor difference at best. Otherwise, they have a mostly featureless face, with prominent slanted eyes, and a flat or slightly grinning slash for a mouth. They are creepy little gremlins. What has to be mentioned is a sequence with these aliens where their word balloons are completely empty of text. It shows they're capable of communication, but their language is beyond our comprehension. Or quite possibly, they're telepathic, and what they're saying isn't producing sound. It's a very interesting touch. It's not the type of experimentation one would expect to see in a Dell comic. Honestly, there's not a lot to say about this series. It's kind of fun and amusing to read, to see early interpretations of UFO mythology. UFO Flying Saucers, and its follow-up series, UFO in Outer Space, is probably the comic most people of a certain, distinguished age remember as the UFO comic. It appears to be the longest-running series dedicated to the subject, lasting for a total of 25 issues. That said, the final 12 issues, when it was rebranded, are mostly reprints. The series is gently broken up into a few sections. There are stories that are pure fiction, in the sense they're not based on any eyewitness accounts. And there are dramatized versions of reported encounters from actual people. There's also pages speculating about the origins of UFOs and their motivations. It is a complete package of UFO lore and mythology, slightly filtered for a younger, not-so-critical audience. Due to the painted, melodramatic covers, the series gives off a distinct pulp magazine vibe. The interiors might not reflect that, but they're awesome to look at nonetheless. One interesting addition is the recurring backup feature, the Hoaxmaster. The host character revealed tales of witnesses who made up false stories for attention, and he analyzes how some evidence is faked, which is what makes this series a complete package. It looks at all aspects of UFO lore. While everything is pretty basic and leans into supporting the presence of aliens, it's not hyperbolic. It's pretty balanced if you consider the complete package. The movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, is a near-perfect examination of aliens and UFOs. As a side note for movie snobs, its three-act movie structure emulates the three definitions of alien encounters. The first act has sightings, the second act contains evidence, and the third act is contact. The comic book adaptation also follows this structure. As an adaptation, this magazine is excellent. After all, the artwork is done by the phenomenal Walt Simonson, with inks by Klaus Janson. So it looks pretty great, and the scenes are staged in a very fluid, intuitive manner. It's nearly a shot-for-shot remake on paper. Sure, the characters in the comic don't look like the characters on the big screen, but that's pretty minor, and probably due to Marvel being unable to get permission to use the actors' likenesses. The story itself is about two characters who've had separate encounters with UFOs. Both feel compelled to investigate this experience, which leads to obsessive behavior, and eventually arriving at a secret test location where contact with aliens is made. Just like the original version of the movie, the aliens in the comic look indistinct. That's because Steven Spielberg, the director, thought they looked pretty cheap and fake, which made the ending look ridiculous. To compensate, the alien scenes are functionally overexposed, so one only gets an impression of their appearance. Even for those that are highly skeptical, this is a great story that is executed very well, on both film and on paper. Silent Invasion is a somewhat obscure, independent work, taking place in the highly charged, paranoid decade of the 50s. It contains UFOs, aliens, the Red Scare, various government agents, and a reporter trying to recover the memory of his own alien abduction. It has a very noir atmosphere, where a double cross seems possible around every corner, and no one is who they appear to be. Other than a brief summary, it's difficult to talk about the series without giving away numerous spoilers. It's not chock full of sudden revelations, but the majority of the plot details are best discovered when reading it. Overall, it's a tale about paranoia and the atmosphere of America in the 50s. It's very well done, with interesting artwork that evokes the pop art style of the era. For those looking for a good piece of independent work from the 80s, this will definitely satisfy. Saucer State and its 2 follow-up series took the theme of alien abductions and explored it. It began at Vertigo, where it was cancelled. Then it was resurrected at another publisher, where it was cancelled once again. Thanks to crowdfunding, the creators managed to bring the series to an ending. The title heavily focused on UFO mythology, which is integrated into a modern presidential election. It is, at its core, a deep state conspiracy story with a reasonably grounded explanation for all that happens. For anyone who has an interest in UFOs and aliens, The Complete Saucer Country contains many details and references to classic UFO legends. Like the X-Files, there is a balance between the surreal nature of aliens on Earth and real explanations to explain certain associated phenomenon. It is ultimately skeptical, but it's also empathetic towards those who have had close encounters. It is smart, amusing, and a series that deserved a much longer, much better fate. That said, it is complete and worth a read. I would highly recommend it. Groom Lake is a raunchy take on alien abductions and the alleged site where UFOs are stored, Area 51. It's basically a standard situation comedy, with stock characters reacting to a pretty basic setup. Personally, the concept of someone being abducted and violated against their will is not an area I find full of humor, so the entire foundation didn't sit well with me. While Ben Temple-Smith's artwork is nice and fluid, it doesn't evoke amusement. It's dark and mysterious, with a murky color palette that gives off an eerie atmosphere. Great art, but completely unsuitable for the material. So all around, not the best example of a comedy series based on UFOs. Blue Book has been a serious, documentary-style account of famous UFO legends. The first series dealt with Barney and Betty Hill, the couple with the first documented story of being abducted and experimented on by gray aliens. Their story is highly significant because it not only entered gray aliens into UFO mythology, but for the first time, aliens seemed to be less than benevolent. Prior to the Hills, most people who had close encounters with aliens usually reported they were concerned about our species and our recent acquisition of atomic weapons. Aliens were our space brethren who spread the message of peace and harmony. With the Hills, aliens were cold and methodical. They examined or experimented with humans, and their motivations seemed vague at best. This is a thread picked up by Whitley Strieber and others in the 1980s, and it would be exploited for dramatic purposes by the X-Files. So the Hills experience was highly influential on UFO mythology. The second series follows Kenneth Arnold, the pilot who is credited with coining the term flying saucer. His story went worldwide and sparked numerous other claims in the late 1940s, some of which he investigated, looking for an explanation to what he saw. Tragically, he discovered mostly fraudulent people and evidence that didn't withstand any level of scrutiny. This seems to be an ongoing series of limited series. Hopefully, it continues to examine pockets of influential UFO history. It's another series I have no problem recommending.
I'm gonna take you down.
The Men in Black, better known as a movie series, takes a portion of the UFO legend and spins it in its own direction. Specifically, the titular Men in Black, who are secret operatives, ensuring fringe encounters are dealt with and remain secret. In some ways, it's the opposite of the X-Files, where the lead characters are led around and kept in the dark. The Men in Black are the ones with the knowledge and the tools, ensuring that secrets remain hidden. Speaking of the X-Files, there have been numerous X-File comics over the years. Although, keeping with the tradition of the TV series, the comic integrated all kinds of fringe topics. UFOs and aliens were an ongoing subplot tying the series together. There were numerous series and numerous writers and artists, so the stories are many and varied. Thank you for watching. Thanks to all my fine supporters on Patreon and YouTube. Your ongoing support makes it possible for this channel to continue. I appreciate every single one of you. Please subscribe if you've not already. Leave a comment and a like. I try to keep ads and self-promotional bits like this to a minimum. So if you can, consider directly supporting this channel on Patreon. Extra special thanks to Green Man, Eidolon, Constant Disappointment Records, Jeff Nicholson, Sicken, Francis De La Cruz, Russell Bull, John Nyhughes, Andrew Barton, Odin Ashcroft, Rudy St. Dennis, Phil Sagan, Edward Clayton Andrew, Corey Drew, Ellis Gregor, Brian Deaton, Tom Granis, John Gaunt, James Graham, and Matt Marino. You're all justified and ancient.
I can't believe it!
That's all you got?
Ever tried smelling your taint? Very terrible, very terrible. Be good, brother. Good day. Good night.
Did you know that David Bowie, one of the greatest musical artists of all time, once had a white witch conduct an exorcism on his possibly possessed pool? The life of David Bowie is perhaps one of the most fascinating journeys you'll find in the history of rock music. Beyond the storied career spanning half a century to the seemingly countless personas he embodied during it, and even the lore behind his final farewell in Black Star, Bowie always proved he was one step ahead of literally everyone. But beyond all the glam and the glamour, there were periods of immense darkness, drama, and even literal demons. And today we'll be digging into that story a bit. Hi, I'm Andy Fenstermaker, host of Poetic Wax, a weekly music history series and podcast where I dig into the record collection I've been building since the 1990s to explore the sometimes little-known history of a band, album, or song from within. The mid-1970s were not a good time for Bowie. Having become immersed in American culture, he spiraled between New York and Los Angeles and Philadelphia before spiraling mentally and physically, and then fleeing to Berlin with Iggy Pop to clean up. In my piece on the dark history surrounding young Americans, I touched briefly on Bowie's fascination with the occult, magic, and witchcraft during this period. And today we're going to expand on that dark snippet in his history, and dig deeper into his paranoia and persona that followed. But first, let's look at diamond dogs, drugs, and departures. It was during the 1974 Diamond Dogs tour across the United States that Bowie's drug use escalated. Predominantly centered around coke, he lost a significant amount of weight, becoming gaunt and emaciated, causing physical debilitation and exacerbating paranoia and mania. This trend would extend into his Plastic Soul era, including the 1975 album Young Americans. And for more of that story, check the link in the description. Bowie would fire his manager, Tony DeFries, in a truly heinous severance agreement, which continued to pump DeFries' pockets with millions and millions of Bowie's earnings for decades to come. Biographer Christopher Sanford wrote that Bowie then, quote, shut himself up on West 20th Street, where for a week his howls could be heard through the locked attic door. In 1976, he'd record Station to Station, now fully embodying the Thin White Duke persona he had introduced the year prior.
Return of the Thin White Duke, throwing darts in lovers' eyes. Here am I, what magical movement, such is the stuff from where dreams are.
The character depicted the extraterrestrial Thomas Jerome Newton from the film The Man Who Fell to Earth, in which Bowie starred. After the release of Station to Station in January of 1976, Bowie toured in support of the album, his addiction continuing to escalate and cause problems before reaching a breaking point in August of that year. Pulling Iggy Pop out of an LA mental institution where he was recovering from his own addiction issues, the two fled to Berlin. About this period, Bowie would comment on the experience of the mid-1970s in a 1987 Musician magazine interview. It's quite a casualty case, isn't it? I'm amazed I came out of that period, honest. When I see that now, I cannot believe I survived it. I was so close to really throwing myself away, physically, completely.
In early 1975, David Bowie relocated from New York to Los Angeles to take on the lead role in Nicholas Roeg's film adaptation of The Man Who Fell to Earth. Portraying the alien Thomas Jerome Newton, Bowie immersed himself in the character, which would be the basis for the Thin White Duke. During the film's production, he stayed with bassist Glenn Hughes of the band Deep Purple, often visiting Iggy Pop, who at the time was in rehab in a nearby mental institution. His increasing dependence on substances led further and further into erratic behavior and a deteriorating mental state. Reflecting on their time together, Hughes recalled Bowie's unpredictable behavior, influenced by his heavy drug use. Bowie stopped using elevators due to his fear of heights, and his addiction ended friendships with other musicians, including Keith Moon of The Who, John Lennon, and Harry Nilsson. Bowie would later state that, quote, "If you really want to lose all your friends and all the relationships you ever held dear, cocaine is the drug to do it with." And then there was Jimmy Page. David Bowie, Jimmy Page, two rock icons, each pushing the limits of music, and art, and the occult. Bowie would become utterly terrified of Page, so much so that he spent the mid-70s convinced the Led Zeppelin guitarist was using dark magic against him. By 1975, Bowie's obsession with the occult, Aleister Crowley, Kabbalah, ritual magic, was at its height, all fueled by his addiction. His mind was a swirl of esoteric texts and of drug-fueled visions. Page, too, was no stranger to the dark arts. He had bought the infamous Scottish estate once owned by Aleister Crowley himself. Crowley, a man known for his bizarre and sometimes terrifying magical practices. Page even owned an occult bookstore in London, stocked with rare and arcane texts. Bowie, fascinated by this magical, mythical underworld, was initially intrigued by Page, but the fascination soon turned to terror. Bowie became convinced that some dark force, was watching him, and he believed that Page was using his magic against him, cursing him from afar. His paranoia spiraled out of control. He lined the windows of his home with protective symbols. He kept bowls and jars of his own urine around the house. He thought if Page got a hold of it, or some of these demons or aliens or whatever these things were, they would use it against him. This wasn't just a passing fear. Bowie was genuinely terrified. He refused to see Page. He severed all contact, and when friends tried to reassure him that nothing was going on, he wouldn't hear it. He believed he was being watched, manipulated, and maybe even hunted. By the time he fled Los Angeles with Iggy Pop in 1976, the damage was done. He never spoke to Jimmy Page again. Was it drugs? Delusion? Or did Bowie truly see something lurking in the shadows? Or his pool? Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. Bowie believed he was in danger, and he believed Jimmy Page was behind it. And that brings us to the paranormal, demon-possessed pool. Bowie's increasing obsession with the occult, mysticism, and supernatural forces came at a monumental cost. He was deep in this period of paranoia, convinced that unseen dark entities were influencing his life. According to biographer Peter Doggett, writer of The Man Who Sold the World, David Bowie in the 1970s, Bowie believed his home was haunted and filled with negative energy. He began drawing protective pentagrams on the walls and engaged in rituals to ward off spirits and seeking other methods to shield himself from dark entities. It was common to see books like Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune scattered across his home, looking to white magic to counter those evil dark forces. But one particular incident pushed his fears to a breaking point. Shortly after moving into 637 North Doheny Drive in Beverly Hills, he became convinced that his pool was possessed. Bowie and his then-wife Angie recounted that strange, inexplicable phenomena centered around the pool. Objects would move on their own. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally, and most disturbingly, Bowie claimed to have seen a dark figure rising from the water. According to Angie's 1993 memoir, Backstage Passes, Life on the Wild Side with David Bowie, she walked outside one evening to find Bowie in a state of absolute terror. He insisted that something sinister was in the water, something beyond explanation. Angie wrote that she saw a form rising up through the pool, which deeply unsettled them both. The couple, already immersed in occult beliefs, decided that a drastic action was necessary. Speaking with Dylan Jones for the book David Bowie, A Life, Glenn Hughes would say, he felt his pool in his LA home was haunted. He felt the devil was in the pool. The wind was howling, and the pool started to bubble like a jacuzzi. I swear to you, I have a pool and I have never seen it bubble before. That pool was freaking bubbling. Sure, maybe you can blame the drugs, but Hughes would continue. On coke, you could talk yourself into seeing anything. Bowie believed it was Satan himself rising from the water. Desperate to rid the house of its dark energy, Bowie sought out the services of the self-proclaimed White Witch of New York to perform an exorcism. This person, Wally Elmlark, arrived at the house and conducted a cleansing ritual, complete with incantations and holy water. According to Angie, as the ritual was performed, she and Bowie both saw strange, swirling shapes in the water, as if an unseen force was recanting violently to the purification process. Angie later recalled in Backstage Passes that Bowie was deeply shaken by what he witnessed, convinced that real supernatural forces were at play. After the ritual, the disturbances reportedly stopped, but Bowie wouldn't remain in LA for long. It was shortly after this incident that Bowie left Los Angeles altogether, seeking an escape from paranoia, from drug use, from the paranormal, and from the occult fascinations that had consumed him. He relocated to Berlin in 1976, where he underwent a personal and creative transformation, leaving behind the excesses of his LA years. The events surrounding the exorcism of the pool became one of the most infamous and bizarre stories from this era of his life. Could the infamous Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin have really cast dark forces on Bowie during this time? Was it all drug-induced hallucinations? Or, as time passes, has the story just become as exaggerated and contorted as the figures Bowie saw emerging from the pool? Regardless, Bowie himself was deeply affected by the experience. Whether a supernatural encounter or a manifestation of his deteriorating mental state, the exorcism of David Bowie's swimming pool remains one of rock history's most eerie and most intriguing legends.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. If you could hit an undo button in comics, what would it be? It's easy to, the problem is you have to really narrow this question down. You could if you could undo everything and anything, then I think, then it's just like, how would you rather have it be? I mean, you're inventing kind of a whole new world. But can you pinpoint like one error or one mistake or one kind of moment in time that if you could undo it, it would make the comic industry or comics better? And I'm not even going to go down the road. Some of the code of the streets is that I don't snitch. I'm not going down the road of like make it healthy or make it survive or I'm not saying anything negative. You might be very happy with where comics are today. You may be enjoying a lot of what the indie market's doing or the big two is doing or whatever. Like you may be happy. So I'd like you to look at the question. I'm going to give you my answer. This whole point of this, but I'd like you to think about this question. But even if you're loving everything, surely in the last 20, 30 years or whatever, you have something that you wish you could undo. That you wish, like, if I could just repair one sin, one bad thing in comics, what would it be? Or one thing that you could have gone better. I think it's interesting to kind of ponder that. For me, I'll give you mine, and I may have a couple. So I'm gonna start with one that I think about a lot, because I think about the what if world if this hadn't have happened. And so here's an example. okay? Or not the example. Here's what I would say. Back in the early 90s, so a long time ago, Bob Harris more or less drove Chris Claremont out of the X office and went all in on artists. Basically went all in on Jim Lee, on the X-Men, and some of the other Image artists at the time. As a move, to me, it's one of the most disastrous moves, I think, in all of comics, because it set in motion a lot of different things that I think created just a ripple effect of problems. Ultimately, it signaled to Jim Lee and to kind of Rob Liefeld and Todd, and I think, by the way, they would disagree with my assessment, but, you know, an outsider somewhat, I've talked to a lot of people involved, it sent a message that, you know, basically they were willing to kind of move a long-term storyteller in Claremont and a lot of other elements of the writing team out in favor of, you know, art. And art is very critical to comics, don't get me wrong. But I think until that time, you had a pretty decent balance. Not a perfect one by any stretch of the imagination, but you had a reasonable balance of writer and artist. You had superstar artists, and you had writers that you know, were really kind of masters of their craft, and you had editors that were kind of involved in that mix. I mean, I think you had a really good teamwork, really good combination. But when Claremont was forced out, in theory, and a lot of people have denied this in the years to come, in theory to basically give more power to Jim Lee, well, you know, if you see how that played out, less than a year later, the Image 6, you know, they left. The top artists at Marvel bailed and formed Image. You know, I don't know if it's a true statement or not, but there's at least some ideas that, you know, they, you know, that basically it sent them a message that they could, you know, they didn't have to kind of work with other people, that they were superstars, so that the company would move heaven and earth to give them what they wanted. Now, if you've ever managed people, that's often not a great idea. You know, if you let somebody believe that they're indispensable, well, you know, it can have problems. So they left to go to Image. Marvel, reeling from the fact that their top artists all left simultaneously, had such an overreaction that you still feel it in Marvel today, where they downplay the artist. Marvel is very, very leery at this point of superstar artists. They've done little things since then where they, like the Young Guns of Marvel and kind of these areas where they promoted art, but nowhere even close to where they're at in the 80s and the 90s, at the, you know, before this all went down. They changed. They went to a writer-centric company, and that was largely a disaster. Comic books are a visual medium, and so I think it changed the trajectory of Marvel to a huge extent. Now I'm tying a bunch of things together that, you know, I don't think they're, you know, necessarily related. I mean, like, you can't lay the blame for Marvel kind of backing away from artists on Jim Lee's feet or Todd McFarlane's feet. But all of these things kind of combine. So if I could hit the undo button, if there was a what-if world, the what-if world would have been Bob Harris, you know, giving Todd more money. He wanted more money. A lot of these artists did. It's weird. It's been said, and who knows if it's true or not, that if you would have given Todd like $50 more a page, you know, he would have never left. I don't know the exact number, but it's been said that a relatively small amount of money going to the artists would have kept them right at Marvel. And if you had maintained that balance of, at the time, I mean, you've got Chris Claremont, you've got Louis Simonson, John Byrne was doing more writing than art, I think, at that point. And Cinti was over there. You had a lot of really talented writers, and they were working in a pretty decent harmony with the artists to do books, and you had relatively strong management of editorial. The whole combo was really healthy. And so if I could undo one thing, it would be that. I think there's other things, by the way, in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. So before I go on to it, my point here is, if Bob Harris hadn't made the changes he made, and in effect forced Claremont out in order to kind of give Jim Lee something, I think the strength of that title would have continued. I think the balance of power between writer and artist would have been preserved. I don't think Marvel would have lost a lot of their top artists. I don't think they would have become gun shy about promoting artists in the future. I think all of it would have led to a healthier environment, healthier company. And so I think that was one of the hugest. I think that's one of the biggest mess ups that have been had. Beyond that, I think if you want to get into other things that could be undone, I think the death of the newsstand is a big one. I think Diamond becoming a monopoly is a big one. I think big parts of kind of how the New 52 both rose and fell are a pretty big one. I think Marvel's knee-jerk reaction to being purchased by Disney, which caused them to deprioritize a bunch of characters like, say, the X-Men and go for the Inhumans, is a big one. I mean, I think there's a lot of kind of major things. IDW going all in on licenses is probably a smaller one, but anyway, there's a bunch of things in there that if you could hit the undo button,
Do you know who you're fucking with here?
I think we have a much stronger, much healthier comic industry today. Shut up! And so I'm curious what yours are. Let me know in the comments below. What kind of what if the world of comics would be better if
But I've
moment
never
do
seen.
you have?
How could it be?
And truly think big impact. Like if you're going to be like, Vita Ayala never worked in comics. Okay, what kind of impact would that really have had? Really? Like, okay, Vita's gone. Our books, and they're erased from existence. Would that really have changed anything at Marvel in any meaningful way? Anyway, let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.
You out your mind? Thanks, dude. Thanks
Tonight,
a lot.
Pope Leo took the time to speak to reporters about some of the big issues making news. EWTN News Vatican correspondent Valentina Di Donato was there.
Pope Leo XIV for the past few months has been spending time at his residence at Castel Gandolfo, outside of Rome, where we are here now. On several occasions, he has been stopping on his way back to the Vatican to speak with the press. And today he answered questions on the new plan Trump and Netanyahu proposed for a peace deal in Gaza, saying he hopes that all parties accept the deal and that it is important to arrive at a ceasefire and the freeing of the hostages. On the flotilla that is quickly approaching Gaza with humanitarian aid, the Holy Father said it shows the desire for those aboard to respond to a real humanitarian emergency, but that he hopes that there is no violence that occurs. The Holy Father then spoke to me about the current controversy in the United States over the decision by Cardinal Blaise Cupich of Chicago to grant a Lifetime Achievement Award to the supporter of legal abortion, Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois. Take a listen.
Not terribly familiar with the particular case. I think that it's very important to look at the overall work that a senator has done during, if I'm not mistaken, 40 years of service in the United States Senate. I understand the difficulty and the tensions, but I think, as I myself have spoken in the past, it's important to look at many issues that are related to what is the teaching of the church. Someone who says I'm against abortion but says I'm in favor of the death penalty is not really pro-life. So someone who says that I'm against abortion but I'm in agreement with the inhuman treatment of immigrants who are in the United States, I don't know if that's pro-life. So they're very complex issues. I don't know if anyone has all the truth on them, but I would ask first and foremost that there be greater respect for one another and that we search together both as human beings, in that case as American citizens or citizens of the state of Illinois, as well as Catholics, to say we need to, really look closely at all of these ethical issues and to find the way forward as church. Church teaching on each one of those issues is very clear.
We will continue to be following the Pope's comments. Back to you, Veronica.
Hello, wonderful person, this is Anton, and today we're going to discuss some of the recent updates about the most mysterious object in the solar system as of 2025, the by now famous third interstellar comet 3I Atlas. The comet that was officially discovered on July 1st of 2025, and a comet that astronomers have been racing to study because it's actually going to be almost completely invisible to us for several months very, very soon. And so in the last few weeks, especially in September of 2025, we actually did have a lot of new studies and a lot of new observations, which means that we kind of have to talk about them again, because this comet is once again changing and is doing something nobody expected. But just so that we're clear, still no aliens, despite the fact that apparently it turned green. And we'll discuss why in a few seconds. And so here, based on the observations from the James Webb and the Very Large Telescope, along with the new observations from the Gemini South Observatory, we now have an even better understanding of what's going on here, but some of the initial assumptions about this comet have sort of fundamentally changed, because this is as unusual and as alien as comets can get. And it seems to be unusual both physically and chemically. And so today we're going to focus on some of these new studies, all of which, as always, you can find in the description below, and mostly focus on why this comet is just so different from anything in the solar system, and what sort of explanations we currently have for all of this, and what do we know so far. And so let's start with the coma and the activity itself, because that's really where most of the mysteries come from. And so here, just as a reminder, we know this contains a solid icy core, or a nucleus, surrounded by the fuzzy atmosphere known as coma. This is essentially what you see right there, and this is why it's sort of difficult to see the surface, because it's covering everything. And in all comets in the solar system, the coma itself usually forms when the object gets relatively close to the orbit of Jupiter, or approximately 5 to 6 astronomical units away from the Sun. And in general, this involves the process known as sublimation, or essentially the solid particles on the surface, instead of melting, just become gas. But the major mystery about 3I Atlas was its unusual activity that was really unexpected, because it actually became active much farther away, with the observations from the Gemini South in August of 2025 confirming that it's still growing and still emitting more and more stuff, which implied that it seems to possess the chemical makeup and the composition that we most likely have never seen before, because we don't expect things to sublimate so early for any of the comets we have here. And so by August of 2025, Gemini South Telescope captured a visible and very prominent anti-solar tail, or tail pointing away from the Sun, that was at least 56,000 kilometers in length, definitely confirming that this seems to have classical cometary behavior. But interestingly, during the early August, we also noticed that some of the inner coma appeared to be slightly elongated and pointing toward the Sun. So it basically had a kind of an anti-tail, but it was pretty quickly determined to be not a tail at all, and instead a dust plume being emitted preferentially from the sunlit side, where the dramatic heating of ice made it sublimate much more actively, essentially releasing a huge amount of dust toward the direction of the Sun instead of away from the Sun. And by early September, observations confirmed that the inner coma has now evolved into a fan shape, implying that even compared to comets right here in the solar system, this one here was evolving super quickly. And this constant change and these constant emissions gave scientists enough data to start making assumptions about its composition and the core itself. And while almost right away, based on the detections from the James Webb, it was determined to be a strange comet in terms of actual elements. First of all, it was incredibly enriched in carbon dioxide. Here the ratio of carbon dioxide to water was approximately 7.6 to 1. Much higher than anything in the solar system. And because we know carbon dioxide melts at much lower temperatures, this definitively explained why this comet became visible so early on. It essentially started to become cometary at much farther distances because it was mostly carbon dioxide, or at least its surface was mostly carbon dioxide based, with only a little bit of water. And this potentially implies that 3I Atlas may have been formed outside its parent star, or perhaps near what's known as the carbon dioxide ice line. It's essentially a line much farther away from the star, where temperatures are usually cold enough for carbon dioxide or dry ice to condensate and to form solid structures, because otherwise there's really no good explanation for why there's so much CO2 on the surface. And here it was also confirmed that the nucleus has a very thick insulating crust, very likely suppressing sublimation of water, and very likely causing water to remain trapped inside, which basically implies that it has somewhat bizarre surface structure. But at the same time, the Very Large Telescope in Chile was able to confirm two very specific elements that we usually do find around comets. It detected the cyanogen ions, or ions of cyanide, an atomic vapor of nickel. Now, as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, detecting nickel in this case is very common. As a matter of fact, a lot of comets out there usually emit nickel, so that by itself does not mean that this is a metallic object. But what is super strange is that we normally also expect the emissions of iron. And so even though in the solar system, in a natural comet, we do see both iron and nickel, here the lack of iron vapor is actually kind of bizarre, suggesting once again that it seems to have a different formation history from a typical comet in the solar system, with additional observations also revealing that this comet seems to lack a lot of carbon chain compounds, specifically compounds like C2 or dicarbon. And that's actually kind of important for what we're going to be discussing next, which is its change of color. And so because this was depleted in carbon chain compounds, which we do expect to see around comets, here this suggests that compared to comets in the solar system, 3I Atlas was extremely depleted in dicarbon compared to cyanogen atoms. Once again, not something we observe in the solar system, making this super bizarre, at least in terms of chemistry. But now, just a few days ago from when I'm making this video, a team of astrophotographers, Michael Jaeger and Gerald Remen, were able to capture the comet during a lunar eclipse over the skies of Namibia, with this incredible and very beautiful picture showing us something that currently does not make a lot of sense. As you can see, the comet seems to be green. Okay, so that's not unusual for comets, but usually this bright emerald green color is actually caused by dicarbons in a typical solar system comet. So basically, if we see green comets, it's because of the dicarbon atoms being ionized by the solar radiation and emitting green light. Yet, as I just mentioned, the chemical observations from just a few weeks ago discovered no bicarbon, establishing that this is a bicarbon-poor comet and thus should not be able to produce these colors. And so at least as of today, spectroscopic observations suggest that there is no dicarbon at all. Although here I have to mention something really important that's been circulating on the web and unfortunately has been kind of misrepresented by Avi Loeb, that Harvard guy. In one of his recent blog posts on Medium, he essentially tries to explain this color as the emission of cyanide that was confirmed around the comet. And the thing is, well, that's actually kind of incorrect. As a matter of fact, I believe it's very incorrect. I'm actually going to post a link for this older paper from 1994 that specifically talks about this, but for some reason some articles and some websites, and of course Avi Loeb's post, seem to claim that cyanogen emits green light. However, cyanogen emits mostly violet light at 387 nanometers. As a matter of fact, it's almost ultraviolet emissions. And though it does have some weak emissions at 420 nanometers, and the infrared as well, it does not produce any green light at all. And so at the moment it's actually unclear how all of this started and why so much press picked up on this, but for typical comets, cyanogen does not contribute to the green color, as you can learn from the study in the description. And as a matter of fact, the study is called The Cometary Fluorescence Spectrum of Cyanogen. So like literally the entire study is about the colors. And so the reality right now is that nobody knows why exactly it's green, but that's of course part of the exciting mystery. Because this is such an unusual object and because it's from a completely different star system, we do expect it to emit some really strange things. With the other mystery coming from a slightly different observation in regards to its polarization, with the idea of polarization referring to the light waves wiggling in all directions instead of wiggling in a single direction. And so here, based on the Nordic Optical Telescope, the additional observations from the comet revealed that it's characterized by an extremely deep and narrow negative polarization branch, which is very, very strange for comets and asteroids, and even previous comets like 2I Borisov or comet Oumuamua. And so these negative polarization effects suggest that the dust coma is made from a unique mixture of icy and dark materials, with some of the lab experiments showing that a thin frost layer of water ice covering dark surfaces could maybe produce polarization measurements similar to 3I Atlas. Although something somewhat similar has been observed from very far away objects, such as trans-Neptunian objects, like for example objects like Pluto and its moon Charon. And intriguingly, in one of the recent studies about the first interstellar object, Oumuamua, a team of scientists provided enough evidence to suggest that Oumuamua might have been some kind of a Plutoid chunk or a fragment of a Pluto-like object from a different star system because of its very strange characteristics and because of its pure nitrogen ice composition and even its pancake shape. And so it would not be strange that we actually have something very similar here as well, with this object also coming from some kind of a faraway region in a different star system, and possibly also being a chunk of a dwarf planet, or some other chunk of ancient ice from an object far away from the star. But one question we still have no answer for is, of course, so where exactly did this come from, and how old is this? And that's because currently it's impossible to trace where the comet came from, but one of the recent studies that was just published in September used the data from the famous Gaia telescope to try to reconstruct its trajectory, and essentially discovered that in the last 4 million years it did not approach any major stars, and seems to have traveled completely undisturbed for a very long time. Now, beyond 4 million years, we don't really know because the trajectories become very uncertain, but this once again confirms that this is very likely a pristine object. But because it's moving so fast, and because of its relatively unusual trajectory, it's still assumed to be a really old object, possibly billions of years older than the solar system, but even that is no longer certain. As a matter of fact, at least one recent study does suggest that this is maybe a little bit younger at 3 billion years, and not 7 as proposed before. And so in terms of the origin and the age, this is not a question we're going to be answering anytime soon. But apart from the green color discovery, there was also something else that we do see in other comets, but in this case something once again a little bit more extreme. The observations from August and September revealed an unusual shift in the comet's color profile. Initially it appeared to be red, which indicates light reflected from the reddish surface, very likely oxidized for billions of years by cosmic ray exposure. But around mid-August of 2025, the color quickly changed and transitioned to something we usually see in the solar system comets. And right now scientists think this is because of a shift from the red particles from the crust that started to be overwhelmed by white grains of ice coming from the surface. So basically here we had separate emissions at different times, and mostly because the comet started to warm up with more and more stuff coming from the surface. Okay, we've discussed the composition, the observation of colors and so on, but what's next? Well, there's actually something exciting that's going to be happening in the next few days that a lot of scientists are trying to capture. According to the projections in late September, this comet is on course to be struck by an extremely powerful coronal mass ejection, or basically a kind of a solar burp that on Earth usually produces the aurora. And this high-energy event is expected to provide scientists with very unique insights into what happens to interstellar ices and dust when these bursts of solar wind and radiation start to interact with it. And so they actually want to see what happens to the tail and the coma, and how this affects the color change as well. As a matter of fact, because of these interactions, we might actually see some of the stuff that was not seen previously, because it's now going to be reacting with all of this solar radiation. And so chances are in the next few weeks we're going to hear more about this comet, until it finally disappears behind the sun in October of 2025. But we might also hear back from the Martian missions, because around early October they should be able to see this comet as well, and might actually collect more data. That's once again because around this time the comet is going to be very close to Mars. And so until November and possibly early December, we're not going to hear much about this, just because it's going to be behind the sun. But once the comet becomes visible again, this is going to be super exciting, because we'll get to see how it changed, and we'll get to see what's actually hiding behind all of this bizarre ice on the surface. And we'll also get to see some of the thicker layers underneath the crust, assuming of course the comet survives the passage and does not fall apart. And so this is definitely one of the most exciting events in 2025, and a very exciting object to study, just because we've never seen anything like it in the solar system. Not only is this different from the solar system comets, it's also different from the 2 previous extrasolar comets that did not show any of these emissions. And so as astronomers continue to watch this, and as they continuously gather more information, we'll just wait and see what happens, and we'll definitely come back and discuss this more in one of the future videos very soon. And so until future observations, that's all I wanted to mention. Thank you for watching. Check out previous videos in the description below. Come back tomorrow to learn something else. Support the stream on Patreon, where you can find additional videos without any ads, and can DM me directly, or by joining channel membership that grants you early access. Alternatively, you can also buy the Wonderful Person t-shirt in the description below. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye-bye.
Hey, homies.
What up, Carl?
What the fuck is going on? Do I look like a hooker to you?
What?
Those assholes keep saying shit to me.
Who said this to you?
The construction workers up that hill.
I'ma fuck them up.
Nah, hold up. I got this. I need to go teach him a little respect, huh?
That's right.
Yeah. I've been thinking about getting me some new land anyway.
I'm so good at this game. I really am.
Supposed to be here.
No tips, no tricks. Most streamers, they'll watch some speed run. They'll know the whole entire pathway and route. Right? Some might even use third-party programs. Me, I'm all natural. Outside of the steroids. Oh shit. But that's fine though, right? Like I am not trying to go, like we're fine, right? That's where we needed to fall. Believe it or not, that's where we needed to fall, champs. Right there. That's where we needed to fall. No, I can't do this. I'm not gonna do this. I'm f***ing uninstalling.
Let's get into this stupid-ass game. Let's get into this stupid-ass game. Let's get up to the top of the mountain and finish the job. I say 20-25 minutes max.
God, easy putting hole too.
Break here to the right, I think.
Is that right? Is that right?
Sword.
Well, at least my camera's not broken today. At least our audio's good. Again, for those that don't know, Alex today again is out of the arena, except he's sick. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Baby's juggling in-game physics. This is an advanced game. Get up! Grab that rock! Get up now! Get up! Hold on, man! Grab something! No! Kick! No! What the f*** is going on? No! There's no f***ing leg! Oh, God, man! No! Oh! You better I can't do this. I can't do it. I can do it, but I can't do it again. I can do it. And I can do it. That's the thing, champs. I can do it. What is going on with my camera?
Wait, so is... Wait.
All right. Let's just relax here.
Okay. Oh. Today's gonna be a lot of fun, huh? I don't know what's wrong. I don't fucking know. I don't want to talk about it. We're about halfway through the game. You see that tower? That's where we need to go. Is Doc flying or wants a hug? I just want a big hug. Everyone give me a big hug. Come here. Give me a big hug. 30 minutes. Okay, get up! Do I go left or do I go right? Vote now in chat, please. It's an interactive stream. In fact, let me see you guys.
A lot of people saying left. I don't know what's going. Is my audio? My audio's in sync, right? Let's get right back into it, okay?
Screw you, cop.
What is on my fucking camera right now? Is that what time? 11:02. It's just a timer. Gotcha. Thanks for letting us know what time it is. Doc, what time is it? It's 11:03 with 49 seconds.
Okay, I'm gonna see what I can dig up.
Bro, you're not doing it. You're not doing it. Come on.
Nice clock simulator. Listen, I don't know what's going on technically. Nice and easy.
Shout out to the whip.
Just, there you go. Hold on. Catch a side. Catch a side. No, catch a side. Catch a side. Whoa, 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 whoa! You, do I? Yes. See? We're still in a good spot. What a recovery right there, huh? Wow. This is a skillful coordination of how to do it, champs. Unbelievable, huh, champ? You're just so damn good. We gotta swing our leg in a way that's... Oh
Oh, please tell... Hey. Okay, looks like we're on a tricky part of the mountain. Nothing's gonna go wrong here. Yep. Because of you! Unbelievable! No! You can make fun of me all you want. It's not gonna do. Listen. You making fun of the two-time Doc? There's something wrong with your camera. Doc, play the game. Did you use a sharpener on your head? Doctor, how come you wear stylish black hole for a hat but not me? If you're looking for a tutorial on how to complete baby steps in world record fashion, guess what? You've arrived.
We're good, right? No! What's it with the green screen, Doctor? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. All right. Looks like we found a different way. What do you mean, I? What happened? I don't know where the we're going. Does anybody know? Does anybody know? That thing just fucking pushed me over. What's that? What are you looking for, Doc? Direction. You're on the right track, Doc. All going to plan. Thank you. VSM stands for very slow movement. Gotcha.
Here it is. You think this stupid ass cactus gonna do nothing? So here we go. Look at him go! Look at him go! Get up. Just like that. Is that not the smoothest looking transition you've ever seen? Huh? Whoa, whoa, stop! No, no, no! You! No! 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 No!
I hate this game. I really do. I hate this game. I don't ever want to play this game ever again. Ever. This is where we gotta smooth glide our way down. Okay? That was it? How incredible was that? How incredible am I? Ah! How incredible! Is that the end of the game? That's the end of the game right there. No, just right there is perfect, right? Right there. Oh no! We did it! It's gotta be the end of the game, huh? Woo!
End of the road, Nathan.
Jim, Jesus! Don't do that!
You'll progress no further.
Hell of a game.
Show up on Inspector Gadget. They're gonna make fun of me.
Is this the end of the game right here?
Oh yeah, I'll do the toast.
Is this the end?
I can do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the game. Let's make our way up the staircase and celebrate, shall we?
This is it. The finalmente yo completo.
Hey, this is Angel. You talk. Listen, they want me to wish for cigarettes. I wish.
That's not the end of the game? I am done with the game. I'm done. I'm done. This is the end of the game. Right here. All the way to the top. I just can't stop smiling. Because we're just right there at the end. Finally. And then we can uninstall this game. That's not doable.
Okay, hold on. Dude, that's not fucking happening. That's... You just step across from the middle. First try. Is this the ending?
Daddy, I cut my finger. Can you put me a band-aid?
Here we are. End of the game.
I'm passionate.
The game never ends. No, it does end.
Yeah, it's funny.
Right now.
I was going to wish to go home, too.
Oh, it's normal.
This has got to be some cruel joke. This has to be the way, right? No. What? Why are you trying to get up on... why are you trying to go to the side of it? Grab on something! Come on. Oh, no, that's the one! Oh, my God. No. Keep your foot inside. Keep your foot inside. No. No. Part 3 coming soon. What?
Is technical kindergarten?
this what I'm doing? Is this what I'm doing? That's it. I'm not playing anymore today. I am not going to play the game anymore. Not today. When I first played this game, I got word it was 3 hours. 3 to 5 hours max. And here we are. Are you telling me a part 3? A part 3? We have to play a part 3 of this baby steps game? This is unbelievable. The name is Dr. Disrespect. What the
We're playing Resident Evil Village today. I want to cut